All right, I'm back everyone, and this time with screenshots. So the first thing I want to do before we get into this video is say that I'm not a doctor, so you should consult your doctor before doing any of this stuff, but this is a pretty interesting way to use AI and to use the powerful capabilities of some of these models. So I recently lost 50 pounds, no peptides. As a part of that journey, I really put together a lot of data about my health and my life. Things like my nutrition, weight, activity data, sleep data, workouts. And then also just recently I got my blood drawn through Function Health. When I got all these things back, I started looking at this data and thinking, what if I put this into a large language model? Now, I know what you're thinking. I'm not suggesting that everyone should do this. Yes, privacy is a concern here. I am more accepting of the privacy concerns that come with modern life. I think privacy is a thing of the past, and I strongly believe that all of this data is already gathered about us. I think that privacy is dead, and I definitely know from my work experience in the past that a lot of data is collected about us that we may or may not like. However, that's just kind of the way it is, and I'm gonna side more on the technologist angle here and use this technology for the powerful capabilities that it exposes. One of those things, and one of maybe like the most frustrating things for me about going to your primary care physician, is that they sort of have all of this knowledge in their head, and I almost kind of felt like annoying asking all of these questions. So I was like, well, wait, hold on a second. Aren't some of these models some of the most capable machines that have read corpuses of language that are just like absolutely massive about medical data? So what if I took all of this data and put it into a large language model, specifically into Claude Code, and had it analyze my health data and basically tell me where I'm stupid. Tell me where I can improve my health. I knew that there were some pretty obvious ones, but I think the interesting ones were more of the non-obvious ones. So to start, I want to talk about like all of the data sources that I put together as a part of this process. I didn't really start collecting this data to feed into a large language model. It was more to track my weight loss journey and to understand, as I was on that weight loss journey, how things were trending and, sort of health in general. I'm a strong believer that health is all about trends. It's not about micro-analyzing like very, very specific pieces of data, but rather what does the trend in the data tell you? So for example, when I was losing weight, I wanted to make sure that I was trending down on body fat composition. I wasn't as worried if it was, one day 15% and the next day 16 and then the following week 14%. It's really sort of the mean of that curve. I want to understand, am I trending downwards in weight, and is my muscle holding stable or whatever? And currently I'm at about 12% body fat and had sort of stabilized in January of this year. So the last 7 months have really just been stable maintenance. That's why it felt like the right time to go and get blood drawn, because I was sort of in this like stable state, this sort of homeostasis, if you will. But anyway, getting back to the health data. So I had collected my Apple Health data through my Apple Watch. I had collected all of my workouts through an app called Strong. I'd collected all of my nutrition data through an app called Food Noms, shout out Food Noms. And I had collected my body composition and weight data and other health metrics like blood pressure and things like this through Withings. I have the Withings body comp scale and also a blood pressure monitor from them, the BPM Vision. And then lastly, I also went and got my blood drawn through Function Health and had added on a ton of tests and a bunch of like add-on accessory tests that you can get through Function to understand my body. I really hadn't done the work to learn about my body the way I needed to, and this was definitely a crash course in all of that. So once I'd gathered all of this data, I went ahead and took all of that data and built a skill around the goals that I was trying to accomplish within sort of my health journey. So for example, I want to maintain always anywhere between 10 and 13% body fat. For me, that ends up being about 155 to 165 pounds. That's roughly like 140 to 145 of lean mass. And I have a very rigorous diet that is primarily focused on protein. That's about 160 grams of protein, 100 grams of fat, and 200 grams of carbs. roughly speaking. And then for my workouts, I sort of have a push-pull legs plus a 5 to 10K run per week. And also I focus on trying to do like a mobility day and another day where I do sort of accessory work where it's like hip thrusts and Copenhagen planks, just kind of strengthening the overall body, focused on compound lifts and really just trying to maximize the use of my time in the gym. As for the sleep data, I do wear the watch to sleep. I'm very cautious about having a temperature controlled room. And I did have some personal things that had happened over the past year that, let's say, disrupted my sleep schedule a little bit. So anyway, we get all this data put together, and the goal then in my head was like, let's go ahead and build a doctor skill inside of Claude Code that crystallizes all of these goals into a single place. So I'd sort of put this skill together, and that skill was trained around like, hey, this is my North Star, this is what I'm trying to do. So then once I had the doctor skill ready to go, I went ahead and just fired it off. Said, hey, here's all the data. Go ahead and look at this data. Go ahead and do research about this data. I want you to understand like the bleeding edge, and I want you to understand like what's going on in the health community right now so that we can have the most up-to-date information as a part of this. Then it went ahead and basically crunched the numbers. So I watched it sort of correlate all this data. It built some nice graphics for me, but ultimately the goal was to get it into a Notion page, into my health protocol, which is basically the one-page read-off or memo, like this is what you need to do in order to trend upwards in the direction of all your health goals. So once I'd done this, like it was pretty obvious to me, some of them. There was one specific thing in my diet. I'd been eating too many like Ninja Creamy protein ice cream with Reese's in it, which is horrible to say, but hey, I'm just a human. So that was like maybe an obvious one that it had pointed out to me, but it also pointed out things like I'd gotten tested for PFAS, forever chemicals, and it had pointed out that like increasing soluble fiber in my diet would actually potentially decrease the amount of PFAS in my blood. Another thing that it had pointed out to me was that my deadlift or my posterior chain was not being worked out enough, and I was doing like a lot of front raises with a dumbbell, and that was like excessive, and it said like, hey, you should instead be working on your posterior chain. So I've significantly increased my number of deadlifts since that time, and yes, I have felt stronger in my core, and like sitting all day because I sit for work has gotten significantly easier because sort of my like hips and my posterior chain are in much better condition now because I followed this advice. Now, you should probably also not just blindly follow this advice. That could be a little concerning. There's a moral hazard here. I think one of the things that you should do is, of course, use discretion as a part of this. None of these things were super unobvious, but they certainly were great reminders. Another thing that was pointed out was that I needed to increase my sleep, which, like, again, I knew this, but it had made suggestions about what I should do in order to improve my sleep. So had like purchased a small AC unit for my room, and I'm doing much better on the sleep side of things now. Recovery is crucial for your health, especially if you're in the gym as often as I am. So, you know, it's just something that is totally worthwhile. Anyway, I think the idea here overall is that you want to use these tools, use these large language models for things that are maybe like not just conventional coding or general life advice, but because they are trained on such a wide corpus of information, medical journals, medical research papers, they have access to the internet, of course, so they're able to go out and find what's on the bleeding edge, what is like latent breaking within the medical community. And then that's going to be able to guide you into specific ways to optimize your health. So really, like, the message that I'm trying to convey here is start thinking outside of the box with the types of things you can do. In this case, I had built a doctor skill that was very focused on my goals and trying to align my health habits such that, you know, I can increase my life's longevity and the pleasantness of my life overall. I know this is like a pretty unconventional way to use a large language model. However, the winners usually do things that are unconventional. So take that for what it's worth.